Hi guys, it's Mikey here. Today I wanted to show you how I made this, well, I would say 3D stacked winter scene with some partial die cutting, some distress ink blending, and well, a few boo-boos along the way. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there, but you'll see. I used my distress ink blending recipes that I made this week, and if you're curious to know how I did them, please go to my blog. The link is down below, and maybe you find them useful and make some of your own. I'm using this one, which is Black Suit, Chipped Sapphire, and Stormy Sky. In the recipe, there's an extra color, which is Faded Jeans, but I think it's so similar to Stormy Sky, I left it out because the hole I'm making is quite small. I'm starting with some partial die cutting, and I'm trying to get it in the middle. I tried to eyeball it before, but that didn't work, and I really wanted it in the middle. So I'm measuring it, placing it, and fuffing about for a little bit, just to make sure I get it right. For the partial die cutting, I like to use the old acrylic plates. Those have a straight edge, and I see here, it's really old and it's cracked, and I'm sure it's gonna break anytime soon. The new ones have a beveled edge, and I find it's much harder to place it exactly where you want, or the cut where you want. So I'm making sure it's straight, and I'm going back and forth a few times because I'm using 125 pounds or thereabouts, 250 grams paper, so it's quite thick. And because I'm doing the partial die cutting, I'm of course connecting the two arches, or the end of the arches. And there it is. I'm making sure it's still in the middle, and it was. So it's going on the front of a card, and I thought I might um, cut this panel down to make a mat, but in the end I chose not to. I'm tracing this shape so I know where to ink, and I made a stencil, but it's not the same size. The circle's the same size, but the partial die cutting was different, so yeah. And I'll have to just use the post-it to tape it off. And I'm making sure I'm covering the edges because, as I said, I might make a mat out of the panel, and I didn't want any of my inking to show from behind. And it looks like Mickey Mouse at the moment, but I'm just using bits of paper that I had left over from the die cutting. So I'm using my mini blending tools, and yeah, well, you can see post is not very strong, but that's the only thing that doesn't tear my paper when I pull it off, or my cardstock. So my black suit is very juicy, and it applies very nicely. It's also very hard to um, blend it out. So this is Chip Sapphire, and I'm going over the black a little bit, just to make it less stark. You don't have to, and I didn't in the recipes that you find on my blog. I just blended the border where they meet, and the Stormy Sky at the bottom, and you won't see much of it because of my scene that I'm building up later. I sped the video up, I think, by 2, so it took me about 5 minutes to do this blending. And yeah, there's the boo-boo. I don't know, by opening the mini distress inks or the mini blending tool, somehow a spot appeared there. This was the first one I made, but the circle is um, smaller, and I wanted quite a lot of scene in there. So what I did is I turn it around, I put the die cut back on the stitch line, it just fits in there, and I re-die cut it so the cut edges would point the right way. Because if you just turn it around, sometimes your die cuts have these beveled edges that are pointing upwards instead of down. So just to make it neater, I re-die cut it. I was quite sure that if I tried to partial die cut it again, it wouldn't be the same shape. So I just try to fix it. Been blending on the card base and to make those two match up again. I think that's impossible. So these are Crafting Motions dies that I got earlier this week. The one is called Pine Needles or Landscape Pines, and the other ones is called Moose Deer, Moose and Deer, I guess. And they're stuck with double-sided tape onto the packaging. It's quite hard to get them out. It's the first time I'm using them, so I wasn't sure how it would cut at the edges. So I just took a card panel, also 250 grams or 120 pounds, and I thought, let's see what happens. And it does. It cuts exactly to the lines of the trees. So to get it out of the bigger size paper, I just used a craft knife, or in the end I used the scissors. And I thought I could fit two, and in retrospect I should have put it more up on the paper so I would have more bottom. Does that make sense? Because covering it up, well, you see later. Because the snowbank is so shallow, when you stack them, the background will show through, and I didn't want to, so I had no choice in how to stack them really. But if you make the snowbank higher, you wouldn't have that problem, because you can just cut off the height where you want it to. And I also decided that I wanted the pine trees to be mirrored, so I turned one die cut upside down, and I used my bone folder to get rid of those edges that I was talking about earlier. I'm sure if you do just one row, it would also look quite effective on that background. So it's quite intricate die, and some of the bits didn't cut completely through, and that's also because my cutting plates are a little bit bowed and I don't have the precision mat, so it's not the die, I'm sure. So I wanted one of the trees to poke out as well a little bit, and I thought, should I do partial die cutting with the reindeer and the moose, or just stick them on the snowy hills? And these are from my favorite things, snowdrifts, I think they're called. And I decided to do just the snowbanks and then glue the reindeer on top. I'm not sure how you can do partial die cutting on a snowbank, and it was just too hard to think about it, so I didn't. See, this is where I try to iron out the little ridges that you get when you die cut. Because if I put two rows on top of each other that are exactly the same, it wouldn't be a very interesting scene, would it? So, and it's the only one I have with trees. If you have different ones, then you can of course, use those as well, mix and match your brands. And here you can see the little blue peeking out from behind. I chose to use distress inks, brush pewter, and white from Delusions to make a bit of a night sky or snowing. Sorry, falling snow, snowing fall. That's something new, I think. I just tap it. I dried in between because they react with each other, so I didn't want them to smear or dilute each other. This is when they decided that I can't make a mat anymore because I had a splatter. These are also stuck with double-sided tape, so don't be scared to pull them off. It's quite hard actually. Sorry. I like to get rid of the double-sided tape and put my own magnetic tape on it. So this is the bit of paper left over from cutting the die trees, and it fit all 4 of my dies, so I used it. Waste not, want not, right? In the end, I only used 3 of the die cuts. But, if I have one extra, I can always use it somewhere else. It saves you die cutting multiple times. I thought the deer, especially that small one and the one I'm trying to pry out now, really go well with the size of the trees. And when I cut off the bottom of those arches of the semicircle, I cut it a little bit too far, so I'm using the moves to cover that up. Don't know if you saw it on the video, but yeah, boo boo number 3, I think. I always try to figure out ways to save a project instead of starting again. And this actually was my second attempt because I used the other circle first and I used the stencil and then they didn't meet up where I wanted them. So you can do that if you use the stencil. But I prefer to just use post-it. So the bottom, the furthest away layer, I just used double-sided tape, and then I used 1 layer of foam tape and then 2 layers of foam tape. And I used 3 layers of foam tape to reattach the card front. And this is not very thick foam tape, but for the dimension, it still has to go through the mail. So, don't go crazy. If you hand deliver it, then it doesn't really matter. Just checking if everything fits. And then this snowbank, this one I did with the MFT die cuts, they're just too bumpy and they would reveal the blue that I inked. So I thought I'll just cut one with my scissors. You won't see the bottom, so it doesn't really matter what it looks like. And this is 2 layers. and kneading it up a little bit. I think if it's a night scene, maybe the tree should be black. But I kind of like the yeah, there's another boo boo. I don't know where that came from. It's probably a dirty craft mat. But anyway, the white is very serene and uh, against the quite dark background. I think it looks very atmospheric, very dramatic. One more foam dot just because there was a little bit of a gap. I'm quite curious how this one will go for the mail. So maybe I should mail it to myself and see if it survives. And this is where I'm trying to figure out which deer to use. And my glue was clogged up, so I switched to multimedia matte. I thought if I have any more boo-boos, it would be easier to clean them up, or you won't see them if they come, you know, pouring from behind. So I put the smallest the furthest away, just for the um, oh, I can't think of the word. Perspective. Yeah. And I'm covering up a boo-boo with the mousse. And there's the running deer or the jumping, I don't know. I think it's running. And I put a little bit of foam tape behind his head to fill up the gap. So that's essentially it's the card. I'm covering up the boo-boo on the front with some rhinestones, and I didn't use a message on the front because I didn't think there was quite enough room, and I kind of like it just white. And you know, if you put a black sentiment on there, that would just catch all the attention, and you won't look at the scene. So anyway, I hope you like it. I hope you will go to my blog and see all the recipes I made. They're also on Pinterest. And I will see you again next week. So thank you for watching and bye bye.